Email was already open on my screen when I sat down with my coffee. I hadn't even taken a sip yet. The subject line read, "Congratulations on your new partnership agreement," and the company name beneath it was mine, except I never signed any partnership agreement. I set the mug down very carefully. Then I read it again. My name is Leah Calloway. I'm 31 years old, a licensed CPA with my own small accounting firm in Columbus, Ohio. I built it from nothing, 2 clients my first year, a borrowed desk in a co-working space, and a student loan I was still paying off when I landed my 4th corporate contract. I didn't come from money. I didn't have connections. What I had was a head for numbers that my dad always called borderline unsettling, and a stubbornness that my brother has always called something less polite. My brother. Let's talk about my brother. 3 years older than me, charming in the way that makes people trust him before they should. He can walk into a room and make everyone feel like he came specifically to see them. Growing up, I worshipped him for it. He was the one who helped me study for my CPA exam, who drove 4 hours to help me move into my first apartment, who stood in the back of the room at my firm's opening and clapped the loudest. I thought we were solid. I thought blood meant something. The email I was staring at told a different story. It was a confirmation from a business registration service, the kind you use when you're filing LLC paperwork with the state of Ohio. The new entity was called Callaway Financial Partners, LLC. Listed as a founding partner, my brother. Listed as co-founding partner, contributing 40% of startup capital and lending her professional license as the firm's registered CPA, me. I had never agreed to any of this. I had never been asked. I didn't scream. I didn't call him. I sat in my chair for a long moment, breathing slowly, and thought about the last 6 months. Because when I looked back, really looked, the signs had been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. It started small, the way these things always do. My brother had been struggling. His sales job had dried up after a restructuring, and he'd been floating on savings and what I assumed were odd consulting gigs. He'd started calling more, which I loved, genuinely, but the conversations had shifted. He asked questions about my firm, specific questions, what my annual revenue looked like, whether I had a business line of credit, what my licensing allowed me to do that a non-CPA couldn't. I answered everything because he was my brother, and I thought he was just curious, maybe thinking about a career pivot. Then there were the favors. Small ones. Could he borrow my notary stamp for a personal document? Did I have a copy of my license in PDF form he could reference for a proposal he was putting together? Could I give him the name of the registered agent I used for my firm, just as a reference? I said yes to all of it. Why wouldn't I? My sister-in-law was warmer to me than she'd been in years. She started texting me recipes, asking about my weekend plans, inviting me to their kids' soccer games. I thought maybe things were just good between us now. I thought we'd finally found our rhythm as family. I was an idiot. Not an innocent kind of idiot, the kind that just never suspects. I was the kind of idiot who ignores a low-grade alarm because she doesn't want to believe what it's saying. I heard the beeping. I turned up the music. The document I was staring at had been sent to my email by mistake. The registration service had pulled my contact from a form my brother filed, probably to seem more official. He'd listed my personal email as a secondary contact for the LLC. He hadn't expected me to actually get the confirmation. I opened a new tab and looked up Callaway Financial Partners LLC on the Ohio Secretary of State Business Search. It was there, filed 11 days ago, active status. Using my name, my license number, my professional credentials. I sat back in my chair and felt something happen in my chest that I can only describe as a door closing very quietly, not slamming, not breaking, just shutting, with a soft click in a way that made everything suddenly very still. I picked up my phone and did not call my brother. I called my attorney instead. She answered on the second ring. I described what I had found. There was a pause. "Leah," she said slowly, "do you understand what this means for your license?" I did. Using a CPA's credentials without consent to establish a business entity is fraud. If someone filed taxes or provided financial services under Callaway Financial Partners and traced it back to my license, I could lose everything I'd spent 8 years building, my clients, my reputation, my ability to practice. "I understand," I said. "I need to know what I can do." She told me. I listened to every word. Then I hung up, made another cup of coffee, and started building a file. Here's something people don't tell you about betrayal by someone you love. The grief and the strategy arrive at the same time. You don't get to process one before the other demands your attention. I spent that first evening on my couch with my laptop, pulling every thread I could find. Documents, emails, dates, records, while a low, persistent ache sat in my ribcage and refused to move. I cried once, briefly, into a dish towel in the kitchen around 9 p.m. Then I washed my face and went back to the laptop. I found more than I expected. The registered agent my brother had used was one I'd referred him to. The address listed for Callaway Financial Partners was a mail forwarding service, not his home, which meant he'd planned for questions. The filing used a scanned version of my professional license, which I hadn't sent him, but I had sent him a PDF of it 7 weeks earlier when he said he needed it for a proposal document. The notary stamp I'd lent him appeared on 2 of the filings. He had used every favor I gave him as a building block. Each yes I said was a brick in a wall I didn't know was being built around me. What I couldn't figure out yet was why. What was the end game? The LLC had been active for 11 days, no clients I could find, no website, nothing public-facing. So I waited. I watched. I set up a Google alert on the business name. I asked my attorney to monitor the state database for any additional filings, and I kept calling my brother like everything was normal. That part was harder than it sounds. My brother is perceptive. He reads people well. It's part of what makes him charming and part of what makes him dangerous. I had to be completely neutral. Not warm, not cool, just exactly the sister I'd always been. I asked about his kids. I laughed at his jokes. I mentioned that work was busy and I'd been keeping my head down. He seemed relaxed, easy. He didn't know I knew. 2 weeks later, the Google alert fired. Callaway Financial Partners, LLC, had been listed as the accounting firm of record for a new startup seeking investor funding. The pitch deck, publicly shared in a LinkedIn post, described the firm as an established CPA practice with 8 years of operation and a portfolio of over 60 corporate clients. My firm, 8 years, 60 clients, all real, all mine. My brother was using my entire professional history to make a shell entity look legitimate so he could pitch it to investors and raise capital. I don't know exactly how much he intended to raise. Based on the deck, I estimated somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000. I called my attorney and sent her the link before she'd even said hello. Okay, she said, now we move. I want to be honest about the next 3 weeks because people tend to imagine this part as exciting. The orchestrated takedown, the clever moves, the chess game. It wasn't exciting. It was exhausting and sad and slow. My attorney filed a complaint with the Ohio Accountancy Board. We reported the fraudulent LLC to the Secretary of State's office and to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center because soliciting investment funds under false pretenses crosses into federal wire fraud territory. We contacted LinkedIn to flag the post. We preserved every piece of evidence in a format that could be used in court. I told my parents nothing yet. That was the hardest call, deciding to wait. But I knew that the moment I told them, my brother would find out, and I needed him comfortable. I needed him to keep moving forward with his plan, because every step he took was another piece of evidence. He took a big one. 3 weeks after I found the LLC, my brother called me on a Sunday afternoon. He sounded bright, almost electric. He said he had exciting news and he wanted to tell me in person. Could I come to dinner? I said yes, of course. What time? I sat across from him at his kitchen table that Sunday, watching him pour wine and grin at his wife and tell me about a business opportunity he'd been developing. He was vague at first, the way people are when they're working up to something. Then he leaned forward and said he wanted to bring me in officially, as a named partner. He wanted to combine my client base with his investor network and build something real. He said it like he was giving me a gift. I looked at him for a moment. My brother, who drove 4 hours to help me move. Who clapped the loudest? Who knew exactly how hard I had worked for everything that was mine? Tell me more, I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. He told me everything, how he'd been developing the concept for 8 months, how he'd already laid the groundwork. I noticed he did not mention what that groundwork was, how a group of investors in Cincinnati were ready to commit, pending a meeting with the named CPA partner. That was where he needed me. Just one meeting, just to put a face to the license, he said. Just to shake some hands. He actually said put a face to the license, like I was an accessory, like 8 years of my life was a prop he could borrow. I nodded slowly. I told him I'd need to review whatever paperwork existed before I agreed to anything. He said of course, absolutely, he'd send everything over. He sent it the next morning. It included, tucked near the back, a retroactive partnership agreement, backdated, that would have made me a co-founder of Callaway Financial Partners as of the original filing date. He wanted my signature. That was the end goal. Get me to sign, legitimize everything retroactively, walk into the investor meeting with a real CPA standing next to him, and raise $500,000. I forwarded the documents to my attorney without responding to him. She called me within the hour. This is it, she said. This is the full picture. We were ready. Everything was already filed. The accountancy board complaint, the Secretary of State report, the federal complaint. My attorney had also been in contact with one of the investors' attorneys who had reached out after receiving a quiet tip that the firm's credentials needed verification. The investors had been doing their own due diligence. What they found, with our help, was that Callaway Financial Partners had no actual operating history, no real clients, and a CPA license attached to it without the owner's knowledge or consent. The investor group withdrew. Their attorneys filed their own fraud report with the state. On a Tuesday morning, while I was sitting in my office reviewing a quarterly report for one of my actual clients, my phone rang. It was my brother. He sounded different, tight, controlled in a way that meant the opposite of controlled. Did you say something to the investors? I'm sorry, I said. The Cincinnati group. They pulled out this morning. Their lawyer sent a letter. Something about credential verification. A pause. Leah, did you talk to someone? I set down my pen. I thought about all the times I'd said yes when I shouldn't have. All the favors, all the borrowed stamps and emailed PDFs and referred contacts that he'd turned into a weapon he planned to use against me. I didn't talk to anyone, I said. The documents talked for me. Silence. I know about the LLC, I said quietly. I know about the pitch deck. I know about the backdated agreement you sent me yesterday. I know about all of it. I've known for 6 weeks. He said my name, once, in a voice I hadn't heard from him before, something stripped of charm, just raw and small. The accountancy board has already received a complaint, I continued. The Secretary of State is reviewing the fraudulent filing. There's a federal report on file for wire fraud, and I am not signing anything, not retroactively, not now, not ever. I paused. You should call a lawyer. He didn't say anything for a long time. Leah, I was going to cut you in. You would have made money. It was my money to begin with, I said. You were going to use my name, my license, my clients, my entire career to raise money for yourself. There's no version of that where I would have made anything except a fraud charge. Another silence, then very quietly, I didn't think you'd find out. That sentence landed differently than I expected. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even really a justification. It was just an admission, a window into how he'd done the math on me. He didn't think I'd find out. He'd looked at his little sister, the one who trusted him, the one who said yes, the one who clapped back for him in return because she thought that's what you did for family, and he'd decided she was a safe bet. He underestimated me. That's the whole story, distilled down to one sentence. I know you didn't, I said, and I hung up. The calls from my parents started an hour later. My mother first, then my father, their voices layered with the particular kind of panic that comes from loving two people who are now on opposite sides of something serious. My mother cried. My father asked if there was any way to handle this privately. I listened to both of them, and I felt the ache in my chest move and shift because I loved them, and this was costing them something too, and that wasn't fair, and it also wasn't my fault. I didn't do this to the family, I told my father, as gently as I could. He did. I'm just the one who's making it visible. My father went quiet. Then he said, I know, sweetheart, and I could hear in his voice that he did know, even if he wished he didn't. My brother retained an attorney. So did I. We did not speak again directly. The Ohio Accountancy Board investigation took 4 months. During that time, my license remained active and in good standing. I reported the unauthorized use immediately, which placed me clearly in the position of victim rather than participant. The state LLC was formally dissolved and flagged as fraudulent in the public record. The federal complaint moved more slowly, as federal complaints do, but it moved. My brother's attorney negotiated. There were meetings I wasn't in, conversations my attorney relayed back to me in careful legal language. He cooperated with the state investigation. He agreed to pay restitution for the costs associated with the fraudulent filing and the damage to my professional standing. He signed a consent order with the accountancy board acknowledging the unauthorized use of my credentials. It wasn't a dramatic courtroom moment. It was paperwork and slow institutional gears turning and a lot of waiting. Less satisfying than television would have you believe, but it was real, and it was permanent. The investor group sent a letter of apology, which they didn't have to do, and which I found unexpectedly moving. Their attorney also informed me that they'd been approached by 2 other individuals with similarly structured partnerships, and that my report had helped them avoid a second scheme. That felt like something. That felt like the thing actually meaning something beyond just my own situation. I didn't see my brother for almost 8 months after the phone call. The first time I did, it was Thanksgiving, and my mother had asked us both to come, and neither of us wanted to be the one who made her choose. So we sat at the same table. He looked tired. He looked like someone who'd been carrying something heavy for a long time and hadn't figured out how to put it down. He said he was sorry, not loudly, not in front of everyone. He waited until we happened to be alone in the kitchen for a moment, and he said it quietly, the way you say something that cost you to say. I believed him. I also believed that sorry doesn't rebuild what was broken, and that the version of my brother I believed in for 31 years was a different person than the one who'd looked at everything I'd built and decided it was something he could use. Both of those things are true at the same time, and I've had to learn to hold them together without resolving one into the other. My firm is fine. Better than fine, actually. The accountancy board's public records, which showed the fraudulent use of my license and my immediate report of it, turned out to be something some clients actually noticed, and a few reached out specifically because of it. One told me she'd been looking for a CPA with her own practice after a bad experience with a larger firm and had found me through a search of the state records. She's been with me for 2 years now. Her company is the largest client I've ever had. There is no clean ending to a story like this. The relationship with my brother is not what it was, and I don't think it will be again. Not because I decided to make it permanent, but because some things change the shape of something, and you just have to deal with the new shape. I see him at family events. We talk, it's careful, and it's real, and it's not nothing. What I know now that I didn't know before, trust is not the same as being naive. I trusted my brother because I chose to, because that's what you do for the people you love, and he misused that. That's on him. What I also know is that I caught it. That when something felt wrong, a part of me that I didn't even know was paying attention had already started collecting information. That when the moment came, I was ready. Not because I suspected him, but because I'd spent years building something real, and real things leave trails that liars can't fully cover. He thought locking me out would be simple. I'd already changed all the locks he didn't know about. There's a moment I keep coming back to, not the phone call, not the courtroom paperwork, not even the email that started everything. It's the dinner. My brother pouring wine, grinning, telling me he wanted to bring me in officially, like he was doing me a favor. Like 8 years of my work was something he could fold into his plan and hand back to me with a bow on it. I sat across from him and I smiled and I said, "Tell me more." And something in me was absolutely, completely calm. I've thought a lot about what that calm actually was. I think it was the result of having built something real. When you've done the actual work, the late nights, the difficult clients, the years of keeping your word even when it costs you, you develop a kind of clarity about what belongs to you. Not in a possessive way, in a factual one. I knew what my license meant, I knew what my reputation was worth, and so when someone tried to use those things without asking, there was no confusion about what was happening, just recognition. What my brother did was a failure of character, but it was also a failure of intelligence. He assumed that because I trusted him, I wasn't paying attention. He treated my generosity as evidence of weakness. Every yes I gave him, the notary stamp, the PDF, the registered agent referral, he read as proof that I wouldn't notice the larger pattern. That's not just dishonest, it's short-sighted. The people who think they can take from you quietly are usually the ones who've never had to build anything themselves. They don't understand that builders are always, on some level, tracking the integrity of the structure. I don't say that to be unkind to him, I say it because I think it's the truth that cost him everything. What I've had to sit with, since all of this settled, is the question of what I actually did right. And I think it comes down to three things that I didn't fully have names for while I was living through it. The first is that I never lied. Not to him, not to the investigators, not to my parents. I was strategic about timing, yes, but I didn't manufacture anything or manipulate the record. That mattered practically and personally. You can't build a real case on a crooked foundation, and you can't live easily with yourself if you respond to someone else's dishonesty with your own. The second is that I used my head when my heart wanted to take over. When I found that email, I wanted to call him immediately. I wanted to be hurt out loud. I didn't. I thought it through, I called my attorney, I built the file. Grief and strategy arrived at the same time, and I let strategy go first. That discipline, choosing the measured response over the emotional one, is something I had to practice in real time, and I'm not sure I'd have managed it 5 years earlier. The third is that I didn't quit in the middle. 4 months of investigation is a long time to hold your nerve. There were moments when I wondered if it was worth it, when I watched my mother cry and thought about whether protecting my license was worth fracturing my family. I kept going anyway, not out of spite, but because walking away would have meant accepting that what he did was okay. It wasn't. And I knew that if I let it go, the next person he approached wouldn't have the same trail I'd already laid down. My firm is still standing, my license is clean, and I know something now that I didn't know before, that the thing I built is mine in a way that goes deeper than paperwork. No one can sign their name to it and make it theirs. I already changed all the locks they didn't know about.